Okay, so my name is Xaba, and I'm from an organization called My Future Work. And we are a learning and development agency that specializes in blended learning solutions and digital solutions as well. And today I'm going to be speaking to you about the digital economy, mobilizing the workforce. And I'd like to kick off this conversation really with something that Professor Russell said, and you might be familiar with him. You know, he is an advisor to the Department of Higher Education and Training. And he said, we are constrained in the fight against COVID-19 by the same challenges we are seeking to address, being poverty, inequality, and unemployment, right? Unemployment in the youth was on the rise even before the COVID-19 crisis. We don't know what the figures will be following this crisis. In general, the system is unsound. We are afraid to make tough decisions. We need to make build both decisions. Incremental changes lead to incremental results. So now looking at where are we supposed to be going, right? And I know that you just said, you know, we need to learn really for the enjoyment of learning, and I very much agree with that. But at the moment, as a country, we are, you know, sitting with the crisis, and learning is one of those solutions, right, that can help us with really having an impact in the economy. This is part of the National Skills Development Plan, which their mission is to improve access to occupations in high demand and priority skills, aligning to supporting economic growth, employment creation, and social development, whilst also seeking to address systematic considerations. So learning now needs to be able to lead us to a skilled workforce, increase employment, and have economic impact, right? And our strategy for learning needs to look at that. How do we go from learning to then having a positive economic impact? And digital is one of those factors, right? We've entered the fourth industrial revolution. COVID-19 has fast-tracked digital transformation in ways that, you know, we've never even thought was going to happen. And now we are in a position where digital is here, we are using these solutions and just looking at the value, right, that can be unlocked by digital technologies. And now we're looking at just government services only, right? In a report that was released by PricewaterhouseCoopers last year, they said government services is likely to create the highest value for society through its impact on economic activity, productivity, and service delivery, adding $2 trillion worth of value. And this, you know, is driven by the adoption of technologies such as IoT, connected devices, AI, and platforms. So many organizations are expecting to increase their use of AI, robotics, you know, all these different technologies, but they're sitting with the challenge. And this now comes from a recent report that was released by Deloitte, where organizations are saying 69%, right, regard their current talent pools as insufficiently equipped to execute digital strategies. This is a huge challenge, right? And also 57% of those organizations, L&D curricula does not support their digital strategy. So this is a problem because how do we then rip off the rewards of the digital economy if we don't have the skills that are necessary for us to be able to do that? There are three drivers of digital technology and ways of work in South Africa. And what's driving that within organizations is that organizations want to create unique customer experiences. They're looking at delivering innovative products and services. And they're also looking to reduce costs. So that's what's driving digital technology within organizations. And what does that look like now in terms of how does it affect work and how does it affect skills? So I've got different case studies that I want to show you on how jobs are evolving in South Africa. So let's look at the financial services sector for starters, right? So rapid digital adoption, right, is the result of the increased number of connected devices. Let me just move this quickly. So you've got the rapid digital adoption, and then you've got customer preferences and expectations that are changing. And because of that, right, you've got technologies like your big data analytics and artificial intelligence that are changing the manner in which decisions are made and products are developed and processes are designed. And what does that mean for work now? Roles like your tellers, accountants, auditors are decreasing, you know, your statistic clerks. And we saw this in 2019 with the retrenchments that are happening, you know, with the banks. And the roles that have increased, driven by digital technologies, are your likes of cybersecurity expert, your cloud banking, your investor protection specialist, etc. The second sector I want us to look at is, sorry, so I want us to look at the mining sector next. And what's happening in the mining sector is that falling commodity prices and the depletion of easier to reach minerals are putting pressure on the profitability of mining operations. Mining in South Africa is mostly deep and therefore risky and expensive. So how are people using technology now to respond, to these challenges? For starters, you're looking at drone applications. How does this solve a problem? When mining is deep and dangerous, it means that you don't necessarily have to have humans go all the way down there to go and mine, but you can use technologies, for example, using robotics, looking at using a drone to use that as a camera to go and assess out the space. And so technology is also then become a huge part in the mining industry and what's driving the changes. How is that affecting jobs and the skills that we need to acquire? Decreasing roles, you're looking at your procurement clerks, your crane hosts and winch operators, etc. And increasing roles, again, are more in the digital, right? We are looking at specialists in remining waste dumps, underground drone operator, your data analyst, your application developer, and etc. And the final one that I want us to look at is the education sector in South Africa. It's also driven by, a number of factors. Digitization, number one, there's an increase in demand in learning platforms where COVID-19 has been a strong catalyst in, increasing this demand. And you're also looking at, globalization. And I know that with COVID-19, there's also, deglobalization has also been a factor. But I think that we are experiencing a different kind of globalization where it doesn't necessarily involve where people have to move to another country, but we have become a lot more connected, where people want to be able to work, in other countries, and we are going to see more and more of that happening. Another driving factor with the education sector is aging and older workers that are facing increasing labor market insecurity, and the pressure will mount for access to higher quality reskilling and upskilling opportunities. So what is that, in terms of technology? So improved user interfaces and algorithms building upon big data, they have a significant impact on education and how, we are now teaching. And the roles in terms of jobs that are decreasing, admin roles, teachers who are just showing content, education that is not customized. And increasing roles, we are looking at your learning progress analysts, curated knowledge specialists, learning designer, instructional designers. And for us as a learning and development agency, there's a lot of this that we're already practicing when it comes to our clients. And so our attitude in terms of just dealing with the learning solutions and the skilling solutions that we suggest and what we provide in organizations have to change, right? One of the things that, I know that people find scary is when we speak about the fact that everyone must code, right? It's overwhelming. Would it be great for everybody to code? That would be wonderful. I mean, I myself cannot code. I love to learn how to code. I don't necessarily have the time, right, to do that. But that attitude needs to change, right? And it's not so much about taking everyone and turning everyone into an engineer, but it's about acquiring the necessary digital skills. And the best way is for us to start incorporating digital skills into our everyday work, right? And into our current careers. Because that is a lot more palatable and easier to consume than saying, everyone must learn to code and we need so many engineers, which of course we do, right? I'm not disputing that we need that. But as a worker that's currently, you already have a career, you've been working for so many years, and the changes that need to happen should not overwhelm people, but we need to find strategies to do this in ways that will be easier for people to adopt. And more than anything, we need to lower the barrier. And there's different ways in which we can lower this barrier, right? And it's in our upskilling solutions that we provide. And the first one that I want us to look at is embedded and embodied learning, right? Where the movement of information into the real world from restricted physical settings like buildings. And there's different ways then in which we can move this information. The second one is content commons, where open digital markets, text simulations, video, audio recordings, photographs, and learning tools. And this is one of the ways in which we can use for upskilling. Next one being superstructured work, where micro contributions from large networks of people utilizing social tools and technologies to contribute to a whole and resource assembly in the cloud. And this is not necessarily structured in the sense that, you know, it's a book and the learning has to come from one person, but I guess it's a question of everyone gets to contribute, right, to this pool of knowledge that we have. And the next one being a global learning arbitrage, where we're making use of tutors, mentors, and institutions that are unaccompanied by legacy systems. Next one being new foundations, where a new set of foundation players, organizations, and platform functioning as modern day utilities. So here we are looking at like your open universities, like your Coursera's, your edX's, your Udemy's. I mean, there's all these international ones, but where is our South African one? Where is our South African one that has content that is relevant, you know, to our people, teaching in ways that speak to our people and using methods that are relevant to our people? So we have to look at that as well as an upskilling option. And final one being human software symbiosis, right, where we start to use evidence-based learning analysis for successful learning, so that then we can assess, we can look at, take data, right, from the individual person's learning and be able to assess that journey and say, how are you learning? How is this working? How do we adopt that? And how do we replicate that to help more people learn? So this speaks to more about using AI and using data. Part of the reason why it's important for us to look at different ways of upskilling and lowering the barrier is digital transformation in Africa is driven by mobile device connection. And at the moment, when you look at our digital learning solutions, they are mostly focused on you must have a computer or you must have a laptop, but that's not how digital is really in South Africa currently. I mean, we have a population of 58 million people, and we have 103 million mobile connections, right? And the number of internet users that we've got amongst, you know, the 58 million, you've got about 36 million people. And that's all those internet users are accessing not all, most of them are accessing the internet using the mobile devices. And this is what, you know, the stats look like for mobile devices, where you've got the total number of mobile users, internet users at 34.93 million in South Africa. And mobile internet users as percentage of internet users is 96%, which is, you know, it's a lot. It's the huge number. And then the share of all internet users accessing via smartphones is 95%. And the share of all internet users accessing via feature phones, you're looking at 4.3%. And the daily time spent by a South African using internet and a mobile device is 4 hours a day. That's a big number. I mean, if you think about the fact that mostly we are awake for about 16 hours a day, and to think that about 4 hours of, you know, a day of that 16 hours, we spend that on our mobile devices, shouldn't our learning then evolve, right, to speak to our most organic way of accessing the internet? What we generally strive for really as an organization, as a learning and development organization, is looking at who is the learner and what is the easiest way to access learning, right? And of course, looking at what the barriers and the challenges that they are facing. And then you look at what is then the learning solution, again, you know, still looking at the barriers and dealing with those barriers. And the best way that we find is that when you create a learning solution that and have compassion for the learner really in the process, you know, for that. And so our learning and our ways of upskilling need to be a lot more organic to our landscape, right, in Africa and in South Africa. Yes, we have a challenge with infrastructure, and those challenges are there and those challenges are real. But more than anything else, people are accessing the internet. People are accessing devices, but we are not really focusing at the moment our learning and meeting them at the place where they are, which is mobile. And that's how I'd like to close the session today. Thank you so much.